Have you ever found yourself pausing, maybe mid-stride or, stirring your coffee, and that big, often overwhelming question just pops into your head? What the heck should I do with my life?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
It's a question that feels universal, right?
hmm
Beautiful and profoundly messy all at once. For so many of us, it truly is the lifelong work.
It absolutely is. And the paradox is, while it's so central to feeling fulfilled, we often don't even know where to begin answering it. We end up sort of living by default, just reacting to life without a clear sense of our own internal compass.
Exactly that. And that's precisely why we're taking a deep dive today into Suzy Welch's influential book, Becoming You, the proven method for crafting your authentic life and career.
Great book, really practical stuff in there.
Yeah, our mission with this deep dive is to unpack Professor Welch's incredibly practical and accessible methodology. Think of this as your shortcut to understanding how to craft a truly meaningful, productive, and connected life.
Right. It's all about discovering who you are when you're standing still so that when you do start moving, you know exactly which way to go.
It's about building that crucial bridge between the life you're living right now and the life you truly want, can, and should be living.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how Welch doesn't just offer abstract self-help. She provides a quantifiable framework.
Quantifiable, okay.
Yeah, she argues that your purpose, that deeply fulfilling sense of what you're meant to do, lies at the unique intersection of three crucial data sets. She calls this intersection your area of transcendence.
Your area of transcendence. I love that name.
Me too.
Because it perfectly captures the goal, doesn't it? The ultimate aim is to feel exquisitely alive by living by design, not by default, or even just deliberation.
Can you unpack those terms a bit? Design, default, deliberation.
Sure. So design means real intentionality, truly choosing your path. Default is just reacting to life, like you said. And deliberation is maybe sprinkling in a bit of intention here and there, but not fully living by it.
Got it. So design is the goal. That state of living your authentic purpose.
Exactly. And Suzy Welch herself is a compelling example of this journey. After a period of deep funk, feeling lost after a significant life event.
Right, she talks about that.
She unexpectedly discovered her own area of transcendence. Despite an earlier reluctance to be a teacher, apparently she had identity issues around it because her mother was a teacher.
Oh, interesting.
She found her purpose as a professor, helping other people find their purpose. She describes feeling alive and hopeful, realizing this was exactly where she was meant to be. It really proves that purpose can emerge from unexpected places.
That's a great story. It shows it's possible.
So with that big picture in mind, this area of transcendence, where does Suzy Welch suggest we actually begin? She argues it all starts with excavating your values. That's our first pillar for today.
Values.
Now, when people hear values, they often think of things like kindness or honesty. But I suspect Welch has a different, perhaps more actionable definition here, doesn't she? What does she mean by values?
Yeah, that's a really common misconception, and it's precisely what Welch clarifies. In her framework, values are your deeply held beliefs and motivations in your heart, soul, and mind about how you want to live your life.
Okay, how you want to live.
So they're not virtues like kindness or integrity, which are more like aspirational traits. Her research actually showed that only 17% of people even came close to knowing what values truly were in this sense.
Only 17%?
Wow. And wait for it. Only a startling 7% could actually name their own.
7%. That's genuinely shocking. It highlights how abstract they can feel, I guess.
Totally. We don't often stop to define them.
So if not virtues, what are some examples of these actual values she talks about?
Well, the source mentions things like scope, maybe wanting a broad impact. Then there's belonging, work centrism, family centrism, autonomy, fun.
Fun is a value. I like that.
Yeah. Also luminance, which is interesting. It's about how many people know you, sort of like fame or recognition, and achievement, of course. These are the driving forces behind your decisions and how you define your ideal life.
Okay, that makes more sense. So how do you figure out yours?
To help people identify theirs, Welch introduces what she calls the king or queen of all the exercises, the Values Bridge test. You can actually take it online at valuesbridge.com. There are free and souped-up versions available.
I test. Okay. Valuesbridge.com. That sounds incredibly helpful for gaining clarity. But even once you identify your values, the sources talk about these. 4 horsemen of values destruction.
Ah, yes, the 4 horsemen.
These are common obstacles that prevent us from living authentically. And they all start with E, which is a helpful mnemonic, I suppose.
Indeed. The first is expectations. This can be parental expectations, societal pressures, or even our own self-expectations. Like Max, one of Suzy's students.
Right, the entrepreneur example.
Yeah, he felt the world expected him to be an entrepreneur because of his past experiences, even when it wasn't truly aligned with what he wanted internally, that external pressure.
I think so many of us can relate to that. Feeling pushed in a direction. What's the second E?
The second is expedience. This is simply choosing the path of least resistance. It's often just easier to go along to get along, to avoid friction, even if it pulls you off your true course.
Makes sense. Just easier sometimes.
Then we have events. Significant life changes, like having children or maybe navigating a crisis, can pull you away from your values. Kristen, another student, mentioned.
Her story really hit home.
Yeah, she shared a powerful, really emotional anecdote where all four horsemen applied to her life, especially the events that put her into survival mode, as she called it.
Survival mode, that captures it perfectly. And the last one, economic security, is probably the one most people grapple with, right?
Definitely. This is where financial pressures influence our decisions, even if they conflict with our core values. Kristen, for example, talked about the sheer cost of raising kids in New York City.
Especially kids with special needs, she mentioned.
Right. And that pressure made her stay in an advertising job that wasn't really intentional for her, simply because it paid the bills. It's a very real struggle for so many people.
Absolutely. It's the reality check.
And Kristen also found the "whose life do you want anyway?" exercise incredibly powerful. Have you heard of this one?
Tell me more.
It involves imagining switching lives with maybe 5 or 6 real or fictitious people. It's designed to help you separate identity issues, who you think you should be, from your true values.
How does that work?
Well, for instance, students heading into banking might list entrepreneurs or stay-at-home parents as people whose lives they'd switch with. That reveals a potential misalignment between their chosen path, their perceived identity, and their actual deeper values. It can offer surprising clarity.
Interesting. Sort of a reality check on your aspirations versus your core needs. Okay, so once you've truly excavated your values, using these tools and watching out for the horsemen, the next pillar is identifying your aptitudes.
Pillar 2, aptitudes.
Now, this sounds like another area where people might get it wrong. Maybe confusing aptitudes with learned skills. What exactly are aptitudes in Welch's framework?
Yeah, that's a key distinction. Aptitudes are your natural inborn strengths, your predispositions, your fundamental wiring. It's crucial to differentiate these from skills you've learned or expertise you've acquired.
So, innate stuff.
Exactly. While some talents, like, a child prodigy in music or sports, are obvious from a young age, for most of us, our deepest aptitudes aren't immediately apparent. They often require, a lifelong journey of discovery. The book actually describes 4 ways to test for these aptitudes.
Can you give us an example of, say, a cognitive aptitude? I recall the sources mentioning something about sequential thinking versus being a process supporter.
Absolutely. That's a great example. A sequential thinker is someone whose mind naturally organizes and processes information in a linear, step-by-step fashion, almost like a filing cabinet, They excel at figuring out how things should go.
Okay, planning the steps.
Right. A process supporter, on the other hand, excels at maintaining established processes. They prefer not to figure out how to do things from scratch, but they're brilliant at keeping existing systems running smoothly and efficiently.
Different strengths entirely.
Totally. And Kristen, the student we mentioned earlier, she had a life-changing discovery that she was a sequential thinker.
Ah, so that explains something for her.
Yes, it perfectly explained her natural, almost effortless contribution to an Emmy-nominated commercial she worked on. She just instinctively knew the best sequence of events, how to put it all together.
Wow, that makes so much sense. It's like finding the right puzzle piece for your brain, knowing how you operate best.
Yeah.
What about brainstormers versus idea contributors?
Another good one. So, a brainstormer rapidly generates lots and lots of ideas and tends to have low ego attachment to them. They don't care if an idea is shot down, they just keep firing them out.
Like Max in the class example.
Exactly. Max was noted as a brainstormer, constantly offering suggestions. An idea contributor, like Kristen was identified as, tends to ponder ideas more carefully before sharing them. They might give birth to an idea, as Welch puts it, and like to think it through first.
So one is volume, the other is maybe more developed concepts.
Kind of. And different jobs and team roles really benefit from different types, Knowing which one you are can guide your career choices significantly.
Definitely. Now, beyond cognitive wiring, the book also highlights personality as a significant aptitude. This isn't just how you see yourself, right?
No, crucially, it's about how the world experiences you, how you come across to others.
How do you figure that out? That seems tricky.
Well, there are tools like PIE360 feedback
Mm-hmm.
and LMA key mention that can provide structured insights. Or you can use simple hacks like asking trusted friends or colleagues what word comes to mind when your name pops up on their phone.
Huh. That could be revealing or terrifying.
Right. Suzy Welch herself learned she was often experienced as a machine, reflecting her intensity and drive. And Max, the brainstormer, also got feedback about his level of collaboration, which gave him valuable self-awareness.
Okay, so it's about external perception.
Yes. And Welch has a really strong stance, the sources call it almost a rant, on why aptitudes are often neglected but are absolutely crucial for career success and fulfillment.
What's her core message there?
She basically asserts that you can't do becoming you just with values and economically viable interests. You need the aptitude piece. She urges you to go where you are naturally good rather than trying to, quote, write your story with your non-dominant hand.
Ooh, that's such a powerful metaphor, trying to write your life story with your non-dominant hand.
Isn't it?
It truly highlights why understanding your innate strengths is so vital. It feels like wasted effort otherwise.
Exactly. Fighting against your own nature.
Okay, so let's say you've dug deep into your values. You understand your innate aptitudes. But how do you actually make a living doing this? How do you pay the bills? That's where Welch introduces the crucial third pillar, pinpointing economically viable interests.
Pillar 3, the practical bit. This is where your why, your values, and what you're good at, your aptitudes, meet the real world.
So it connects purpose to practicality.
Precisely. It's the component that ensures your deepest purpose can actually sustain you financially. Welch emphasizes this isn't just about making money in the abstract. It's about identifying specific industries, market demands, or maybe niches where your unique combination of values and aptitudes can create tangible value.
Value that people are willing to pay for.
Exactly. Value that someone, somewhere needs and is willing to exchange money for. The book details methods for researching these areas, even suggesting small experiments like side projects to test the waters.
Testing viability.
Yes, ensuring your passion isn't just a hobby, but a truly viable path forward. It really grounds the entire concept in real-world application. Otherwise, it's just a nice idea, right?
It could stay theoretical. Okay, so you have these three data sets, your values, aptitudes, and economically viable interests. The intersection is your area of transcendence. How does it all come together in real life? The book is full of stories, which really helps illustrate it. Let's talk about Anna, the med spa CEO.
Ah, Anna's story. It's a great illustration that finding your area of transcendence doesn't always mean some drastic career change, like quitting your job and moving to Tahiti.
Right, she was already a CEO.
Yeah, she was in Suzy's MBA program, feeling absolutely miserable, really overwhelmed, trying to balance being a mom and running this company. But after going through the Becoming You process...
What did she discover?
She discovered she was already living her core values and using her key aptitudes. Her work itself was actually perfectly aligned with what she was truly good at and what mattered to her.
Why was she miserable?
Her breakthrough wasn't finding a new job, but realizing the source of her unhappiness was a small tweak needed in her mindset. It was about addressing the deep guilt she felt about how little time she thought she was spending with her daughter.
Ah, the guilt.
Yes. When she worked through that mindset shift, reframed how she saw her time and contribution, she realized she was living her purpose. It was a complete success story, but without changing jobs at all, just adjusting her perspective.
That's powerful. Sometimes the change needed is internal, not external. A mindset shift.
Absolutely. Then there's Sophia, Suzy Welch's own daughter. Her journey to becoming a casting director sounds quite different, more of a winding path.
Yeah, tell us about Sophia.
Sophia's story shows that finding your purpose can be, well, a meandering process. As a child, she apparently struggled quite a bit in school, even failed weather, which is mentioned as a specific example.
Failed weather. Okay.
Right. She felt lost and unsure of her strengths for a long time. Yet through years of exploration, trying different things, she ultimately found her area of transcendence in casting.
In casting. Okay, connecting actors with roles.
Exactly. And while her work might not perfectly fulfill all her initial values, she had to make trade-offs, like accepting less predictability, because casting can be very up and down.
Trade-offs are often part of it, aren't they?
For sure. But the key is she feels utterly alive, as Welch puts it, when she's doing it. A key insight for Sophia was letting go of the value of luminance.
Luminance.
Yeah.
That was fame or recognition.
Yeah. She realized that needing widespread fame wasn't actually essential to her fulfillment in her work. Letting go of that freed her up to embrace what truly made her feel alive in casting.
That's a really important point. Sometimes you have to refine or let go of certain values as you discover what truly matters most in practice.
It's an evolution.
And what about McKenna? The sustainability consultant who discovered her true calling was theater producing. That sounds like a pretty significant leap.
McKenna's story brings up a really common dilemma, I think. It's about balancing a current job that, pays the rent with pursuing a deep passion that feels like your real purpose.
The practical versus the passion.
Exactly. She knew her area of transcendence was theater producing, but her day job was in sustainability consulting. This leads to that whole discussion in the book about taking baby steps versus, ripping the Band-Aid off.
Right. Start small or just go for it.
Well, starting with baby steps, like maybe taking producing classes in the evenings, can be a good way to test the waters and build confidence. Suzy Welch actually advocates for going faster than you are comfortable.
Faster than comfortable. That sounds like
Dude, I'm comfortable.
It does. But her strong belief, based on her experience, is that no one ever reaches their purposes and says, gee, I wish I'd come here more slowly.
That hits hard.
Yeah. They almost always say, God, I wish I'd done it 10 years ago.
That's a bold challenge to just dive in. It really speaks to the potential regret people feel when they postpone their true calling for too long.
It's a push to overcome inertia, I think.
Okay, one more story. Dr. Ellen Gendler, the dermatologist. Her reinvention story sounds unique too. Dr. Gendler's experience is fascinating because it highlights how an area of transcendence can evolve, and you can even find a new expression of it later in life, often through unexpected means.
So it wasn't planned.
Not at all. She was in her 60s, recovering from a back procedure, and started exploring Instagram just out of boredom, really.
Okay.
And she was apparently appalled by the amount of misinformation she saw about skincare online. So without really intending to reinvent herself or build a brand, she just started posting correct information, sharing her expertise.
Just correcting the record.
Pretty much. And her social media presence just exploded. She found immense joy and really a new layer of purpose in educating people this way. She stumbled into it by being open to what felt right and alive, even though it wasn't a pre-planned career pivot.
That really demonstrates the power of seizing opportunities that align with your natural inclinations and values, even if they look different from what you expected.
Purpose can find you sometimes if you're open.
So let's bring this all together. For you, the listener, why does all of this matter? What's the real takeaway from diving into becoming you?
Well, I think what's truly powerful here is that Welch doesn't just offer vague advice. She gives you that quantifiable framework we talked about.
The data sets.
Right. In an era where, let's be honest, you're bombarded with options and shoulds, having tangible data on your own inner landscape, your specific values, your unique aptitudes, your viable interests, isn't just relaxing, as one student apparently described it.
Relaxing. Interesting word choice.
Yeah, maybe because it cuts through the noise. But beyond relaxing, it's a strategic advantage. It shifts that huge question, what should I do, from this overwhelming amorphous cloud into something closer to like a scientific exploration. It gives you a personal blueprint.
It sounds like it gives you incredible clarity and almost permission. Is that fair?
Oh, it absolutely does. I think that's a huge part of it. The methodology provides permission to know who we are, permission to be you.
Permission to stop trying to fit into boxes others made for you.
Exactly. It frees you from those external expectations and maybe societal pressures we discussed, and it enables you to define your own life and your own happiness based on your actual data. It's a really powerful shift from living by default to truly living by design.
And it also seems to help navigate the inherent messiness of life. Because let's face it, the journey to purpose, or even just living intentionally, is rarely a straight line, is it?
Not at all. There are struggles, there are always trade-offs like Sophia faced, and what Suzy Welch calls the complications of living your purpose. It's not always easy once you find it.
But having this framework seems to make it all much more navigable. Less about stumbling around in the dark and more about making intentional choices even when things get complicated.
Exactly. It's about having that roadmap, that internal compass, even when the road itself is winding and challenging. It allows you to consciously make choices that align with your authentic self, navigate those complications with more awareness.
So, to recap for everyone listening, understanding your values, your aptitudes, and your economically viable interests provides an incredibly powerful roadmap to your authentic life and career. It's a way to find that sweet spot, that area of transcendence, where you feel, as Welch says, exquisitely alive.
Which really raises an important question for you, our listener, doesn't it? If you have a sense of what your purpose might be, maybe after listening today or doing some of this work, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Because the sources really drive home that point. No one ever reaches their purposes and says, gee, I wish I'd come here more slowly.
You just say, God, I wish I'd done it 10 years ago.
Exactly. Regret is the common theme.
That's quite a thought to ponder, isn't it?
Yeah.
What purpose might you be postponing right now? And how might going faster than comfortable, as uncomfortable as it sounds, actually lead you to a more fulfilling life sooner rather than later?
It's a challenge.
It really is. So if this deep dive has sparked something in you, if you're curious to learn more, we highly encourage you to explore Suzy Welch's work further. You can order her book, Becoming You. Visit her website for more resources, or check out her podcast for even more in-depth explorations of her methodology. It feels like a journey worth taking.
Definitely seems like time well spent figuring this stuff